The afternoon sun hung lazily over the city, casting long golden streaks across the polished surface of a black luxury SUV gliding smoothly through traffic. Inside, the driver sat calm and composed, one hand resting lightly on the steering wheel, eyes steady behind dark sunglasses. There was nothing erratic about the driving, nothing suspicious, just another vehicle among hundreds weaving through the hum of urban life. But to Officer Daniel Ruiz, parked on the side of the road with a radar gun and a chip on his shoulder, something about that SUV didn't sit right. Maybe it was the tinted windows, maybe the quiet confidence of the driver, or maybe it was just one of those days where he felt the need to assert control over something, anything. Without much hesitation, Ruiz flipped on his lights and pulled out, siren chirping sharply. The SUV slowed immediately and pulled over with precise compliance. Ruiz stepped out of his cruiser, adjusting his belt as he approached, his posture stiff, his expression already hardened into suspicion. He tapped twice on the tinted window. Slowly, the glass slid down, revealing a man in his late 30s, sharply dressed, calm to the point of unsettling. "License and registration," Ruiz said flatly. The driver didn't argue. He reached into the glove compartment, retrieving the documents with deliberate ease. "Was I speeding, officer?" he asked, his voice even. Ruiz didn't answer directly. He glanced at the license briefly. "Step out of the vehicle." The man paused for half a second, not in resistance, but in quiet calculation, then nodded and stepped out. People nearby had started to notice. A few pedestrians slowed, curious. A phone camera lifted discreetly from across the street. "Is there a problem?" the driver asked again. "You'll answer the questions," Ruiz snapped. "What's in the vehicle?" "Personal belongings. Work materials." Ruiz circled the SUV, peering through the tinted windows. "Pop the trunk." "I'd prefer to know the reason for—" "Now," Ruiz cut him off sharply. The man studied him for a moment. Then, without raising his voice, he pressed a button on the key fob. The trunk opened silently. Inside, there were neatly arranged cases, sleek, metallic, locked. Not typical luggage, not groceries, not sports gear. Ruiz's suspicion deepened instantly. "What's in those cases?" "Confidential materials." That word sealed it. Ruiz straightened, his tone sharpening. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." The man didn't move immediately, not out of defiance, but as if weighing the inevitability of what was happening. Then, slowly, he complied. The handcuffs clicked into place. From that moment on, everything began to spiral. At the station, the atmosphere was routine, until it wasn't. The SUV driver was booked without much ceremony. No violent resistance, no dramatic outburst, just quiet compliance that unnerved more than aggression ever could. Ruiz filed his report, exaggerating small details, framing suspicion as justification. "Uncooperative," he wrote. "Evasive responses." Meanwhile, the man sat calmly in the holding area, observing everything. Not nervous, not angry, just waiting. About 12 minutes later, the first sign that something was wrong appeared. A call came into the front desk. The officer answering frowned, then stiffened. Yes, he's here. I understand. Sir, The line went dead. "What was that?" another officer asked. The desk officer didn't answer immediately. "Probably nothing," he muttered. But it wasn't nothing. 2 minutes later, another call. This time louder, more urgent. Then another. Within 5 minutes, the entire station felt off, like pressure building before a storm. And then came the sound. At first distant, a low rhythmic thudding, then louder, louder still. Officers began looking up instinctively. Helicopters. Not one. Multiple. The unmistakable thunder of military-grade rotor blades tore through the air above the station. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Officers moved toward windows, confusion etched across their faces. What the hell? Outside, the sky darkened, not from clouds, but from the shadows of descending Black Hawk helicopters. Then everything exploded into motion. Unmarked armored vehicles screeched to a halt around the perimeter. Doors burst open. Armed personnel in full tactical gear poured out with precise coordination. "Everyone stay where you are," a voice boomed through amplified speakers. Inside the station, panic ignited. "What is this?" someone shouted. Ruiz's face drained of color. The front doors didn't open. They were breached. The impact echoed like a bomb. Tactical units flooded in, weapons raised, movements synchronized with chilling efficiency. Hands visible, on the ground. Officers who had spent years commanding authorities suddenly found themselves on the receiving end of it. "What's going on?" the chief yelled, stepping forward. A figure entered behind the tactical unit, calm, controlled, dressed not in armor, but in a simple dark suit. His presence alone shifted the atmosphere. "I'll take custody of the detained individual," he said, voice steady, but carrying absolute authority. Ruiz stepped forward instinctively. "You can't just... This is a police station." The man's gaze shifted to him, sharp and unyielding. "Officer Ruiz, you detained a protected federal asset under classified clearance." Ruiz blinked. "What?" The suited man didn't raise his voice. "You had no jurisdiction." Silence fell like a hammer. The holding cell door opened. The SUV driver stepped out, wrists now free. For the first time, there was the faintest hint of something in his expression. Not anger, not relief, but confirmation. "This was unnecessary," the suited man said quietly to him. "It was predictable," the driver replied. Ruiz's mind raced. "Wait, who is he?" The suited man turned slowly. "Someone you were never supposed to touch." But the twist didn't end there. As the driver was escorted out, he paused briefly near Ruiz. "You thought this was about control," he said softly. "It never was." Ruiz swallowed hard. "Then what is it about?" The man leaned slightly closer. "You'll find out." Outside, the helicopters continued to thunder overhead, kicking up dust and chaos. Civilians gathered at a distance, phones recording everything. But what no one outside knew, what no one could have guessed, was that the contents of those metallic cases in the SUV were not just confidential materials. They were evidence. Evidence tied to a network so deeply embedded within law enforcement that even the highest ranks didn't fully see it. And Ruiz had just triggered its exposure. As the convoy pulled away, leaving the station surrounded by stunned silence, the realization began to settle in. This wasn't a rescue. It was the beginning of something much bigger. Inside the station, internal affairs units began arriving almost immediately. Files were pulled. Systems locked down. Names flagged. And Ruiz's was at the top. Because the truth was, he hadn't been chosen randomly that day. He had been watched, tested, and he had failed. Hours later, sitting alone in an interrogation room, Ruiz stared at his reflection in the glass, the weight of everything pressed down on him. The door opened. The same suited man stepped inside. "Do you understand now?" he asked. Ruiz shook his head slowly. "No, I don't." The man placed a file on the table. "Then let's begin." And as Ruiz opened it, his hands trembling, the final twist revealed itself. The man he arrested was never the target. He was the bait. And Ruiz was the catch.